Yes, it's about to be week 4 in the NFL. This is the WTOP Huddle. I'm Dave Johnson with Dave Preston, Rob Woodford, George Wallace, Chris Chian. We've got the cast of characters, and we know exactly where to start. It's Washington, D.C. We've been talking about quarterbacks in Washington, D.C. for 40 years. We thought that had kind of calmed down, but we're talking again, and we're talking about that young quarterback, Dwayne Haskins, specifically after that 4-turnover performance against the Cleveland Browns. And as we talked about last week, the Browns' pressure, not unexpected. The 4 turnovers, certainly unexpected. I'll begin the discussion by saying that for Dwayne Haskins, as Ron Rivera said, at some point he has to stop acting like a rookie. Having said that, I believe that Dwayne Haskins, unless we start to see a rash of 4-turnover games by the quarterback, he gets this entire season to show us what he can do. I believe that is what this season is all about. You can see it in how Ron Rivera constructed the roster. So I do believe, to Ron Rivera's point, at some point you need to show you're not a rookie anymore. But barring the unexpected, I think he should be allowed to finish out this season. Rob Woodfork on WTOP.com, you wrote a column that the Washington football team should have gone in a different direction with Cam Newton. Explain the story there. That's not going to happen. Cam Newton's moved on, but you've stirred up that subject.
And it's admittedly a little revisionist history. Well, not revisionist history, but just kind of like, Monday morning quarterbacking, or, however you want to say that. But, just looking at that, at the situation there on Sunday, you had a guy who regressed from what we saw at the end of last season, and even to a much lesser extent, the first 2 games of this year. And, I get that they're banged up on the offensive line. I get that, that defensive front for Cleveland is pretty strong. But the problem was he was staring down receivers. He was making bad decisions with the ball. I saw a couple of replays on one of the picks. He had at least 3 open options on the right side of the field, and he throws left because that was where he was supposed to go with the ball, in the playbook or what have you. So you can't have that. And I think Ron Rivera said it Monday that we had all these guys fighting hard. We played well enough to win on defense. We played our hearts out there, and we didn't get the result. We can't have one guy undermining the whole thing. So having said that, it just kind of got my wheels turning, because this offseason, Cam Newton was just sitting there. He was just sitting there for months, a former MVP and all that. And I know he's had injuries, but this was a perfect situation for him in a uncertain offseason because of COVID. That would have been a great low risk, high reward situation for Washington. You play Cam for a year. There's nobody better for Haskins to learn from in terms of what it is to play for Ron Rivera, continuing that culture change and bringing in guys that are going to be representative of what you want to be as a franchise moving forward. So even if Cam was here for a year, even if he maxed out and played MVP caliber ball, there's a very short shelf life on when he's here. And Haskins, you have Haskins for 2 and probably 3 years. You have time to kind of figure out what you have in him. So even if it doesn't happen this year, it just seemed like it made sense for him to sit this year, because you didn't have the offseason work. Learn from Cam, learn from Kyle Allen to a much lesser extent, learn the offense, learn what it is to play quarterback in this league, and then you play him next year. And what I sort of juxtaposed was the Patrick Mahomes. He sat his rookie year for all but his last game. Lamar Jackson would have sat out his rookie year if Joe Flacco didn't get hurt, and he still only played a fraction of that season. There's no shame in it. There's no, it doesn't stunt players' growth for them to sit a year, learn the game, and then in year 2, you throw him to the wolves, whether the offensive line is good or whether or not he's got receivers over the age of 23.
All right, you've already elevated the conversation. Great use of the word juxtapose and making the case for the prosecution. Rob Woodford. And by the way, revisionist history is the currency of D.C., so that's okay.
Well, there's that.
I saw a smile from you, Dave Preston. What were you smiling about?
Well, I think it's amazing how the quarterbacks of the 21st century, we expect to microwave them as opposed to slow roast them, which was the case 10, maybe even 15 years ago. It took a while for Jason Campbell to get on the field. Kirk Cousins did not get on the field for his first year, with the exception of that one win against Cleveland. Yes, RG3 got on the field his first season, magical rookie season, but we expect
Aaron Rodgers.
more of our quarterbacks a lot sooner than we used to. And I think, yes, he has only played, I guess, 10 games. Dwayne Haskins has. And yes, he is still learning, but eventually you're going to expect production from this first-round draft pick. And you also have to take into account that his only true threat is Terry McLaurin. He's throwing key passes in high leverage downs to Logan Thomas, a converted quarterback. A guy like Dontrell Inman, who's a journeyman wide receiver, has had some good seasons here and there, but Inman is basically bouncing around the league and is hanging by a proverbial thread. So you're looking at a quarterback who doesn't necessarily have the weapons, but he needs to make better decisions. He needs to learn from his mistakes. One thing that I heard Coach Ron Rivera and a lot of the staff say was that he'll make that mistake once and then he'll move on. Let's see how he does in week 4 against the Ravens. Let's see how he doesn't stare guys down. And if he does it again, then there are some issues. Let's see how he grows and learns from this past week's experience.
That's the beauty of this show. You both convinced me. I've just changed my opinion that started this whole show. That and there is a serious point that if you rush him or microwave him, as you say, Dave, that you shatter a young player's confidence, and that can be confidence that never comes back. Christian, you look as mad as one of those Browns defensive linemen. What do you want to add to this quarterback debate that, by the way, will not end for the next decade?
Well, I'm a little not mad, but I do have to disagree with my colleague Rob, who did write an excellent column on WTOP.com. But I just think that the organization made a commitment to Dwayne Haskins. You already had Alex Smith here. You're contractually basically obligated to have kept him. And I didn't get bringing in Kyle Allen, who I don't think is very good at all. I think he kind of shocked the league a little bit when he came in. No one really had tape on him. Once they did, he wasn't very good. I get the notion you want to win, and Cam would have helped this team win right now. But I go back to our conversation last week on the huddle where, Dave, you said it. This is Dwayne's team, and he has to start. You invested in him, and I think if they get to a point where they're 2-6, you can consider putting Alex Smith in because you don't want to totally crush Dwayne's confidence. But for now, I just think if you brought in Cam, Dwayne isn't working with a ton. Not a great line, as Dave pointed out, not great pass catchers, but he's got to be put in a position to learn right now on the field experience. I don't think sitting him this year would have been good. Yes, it worked for guys like Aaron Rodgers to allow their body to heal over time from college to the NFL, but in Dwayne's case, he started his rookie year. So to sit him again, I don't think would have been good for his development.
Well, he started his rookie year because of injuries and ineffective play elsewhere. This is a rare situation. It is a beautiful gift to have a former MVP out there on the free agent market. You can get him on the cheap. I mean, you can't even do that in Madden. So to have that sort of opportunity, and he played for your coach his entire career to that point, and there's some injury questions there, but I mean, this is a guy, and we talked about this last week, this is a guy who can create something when there isn't something sometimes. Dwayne hasn't shown, right, and Dwayne has shown that he's not that guy yet, and maybe he's not, maybe he is, and I think he'll get some time to do that. But for this year, where you don't have an offensive line, you don't have receivers, you need a guy who's mobile and who's going to create something for your offense, because here's another thing, the NFC East is awful. It's a dumpster fire. If they win in Cleveland, and I think they would have with some competent quarterback play, you're 2-1. The rest of the division has a losing record, and I mean it's wide open for you. So I know they're building for the long term, but this would have been an opportunity, I think, to win, to be more competitive now, and also give Haskins the ability to learn from somebody who has been there, done that in this system. I just think that that's invaluable, and I think that it's something that would have benefited Haskins, benefited the organization. I don't know how much it benefits Cam because it looks like he's having a really good time in New England, but it certainly would have made things better for Washington and for Haskins maybe long term.
Well, as Chris said, it's an excellent column. He used the word excellent, and you guys can fight it out on the WTOP Huddle after show. That'll be a good debate. It is a good debate. I mean, long term, short term. You know, that's what we love to do in all things in DC. So let's bring this part of the conversation home, George Wallace. Another important fact, and this came up yesterday, right? Or Monday or whatever day in Ron Rivera's press conference. You know, did Dwayne Haskins let the rest of the team down? There's that concern as well. He's knowing your leader and quarterback to the point that he starts to lose the locker room. It's that important a position.
Yeah, and I think, and that's where, you know, Ron Rivera has got to go back and forth on, because you have a quarterback who, look, the owner wanted Dwayne Haskins. He was put in a situation last year that coach didn't want him. Mm-hmm. Okay. The owner wants Dwayne Haskins. Ron Rivera, I don't think could care. I shouldn't say care less, but I'm not sure Ron Rivera is sold on Dwayne Haskins yet. So he has to convince guys in the locker room that he's going to do this and ride or die with Dwayne Haskins. But you have guys, you know, prideful guys in that locker room. You telling guys like Jonathan Allen and those guys on defense that we're going to just punt this year and whatever happens, happens. Those guys came from winning organizations. So that would, to me, would be a hard thing to convince and tell them that you are not trying to win now. I have already seen it in these last couple of weeks with the timeout situation that Ron Rivera it's already in his mind that whatever happens this year happens, and he's not really worried about it. That kind of worries me a little bit, because you should always try and win now, especially in the NFL, when you see teams can look. The Lions beat the Cardinals last week. I mean, you know, in the NFL, you can be good no matter what. You don't have to build. You can be good each year. So for me, that would be a hard thing for me, is trying to convince guys in that locker room that we're doing the right thing and letting Dwayne just go and throw these interceptions. Now, his tone changed, the coaches did on Monday, as Dave just alluded to. You know, he said those guys deserve to win in that locker room. And there is going to be a point where he needs to make a change. Now, and he has to keep seeing the progress from Dwayne. So do I think Dwayne is going to get this year to figure it out? They have to see what they have in him. You're right. They invested the first-round pick on him. You know, last year, he only started a year in college, too. Remember that. And then last year, he had a couple of starts, and this year. So, you know, he has a lot to deal with himself. So this team has to figure out whether or not Dwayne Haskins is going to be the quarterback of this team. And whether that means this year you go 2-14, it'd be a hard time trying to convince me in that locker room if that you're punting on the season as a professional football player. But maybe that's what's in Ron Rivera's head, and that's what he's going to stick with right now until it comes to an absolute point where he needs to make a change. Yeah,
well, again, the beauty of the huddle, I think I just changed my mind again on this, as you made a great point. The NFL, and this is why it's the rating success, it is a league where you are designed to win now. It allows you to win now. It allows you to have do-overs. Rebuilds in the NFL can be 1 year, not 5 years like they are in the NBA because of the contract situation. The timeout thing you brought up, George, not using all the timeouts. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Because that's been a point of contention that Ron Rivera's point is that, you know, doesn't want to get people hurt. We move on. It's long term. A lot of fans unhappy that not taking full advantage of timeouts.
I mean, do you think last year, just for instance, Ron Rivera is getting questions about it. Yeah, and I get it with this year has been totally different. But if somebody like Jay Gruden's doing this last year, guys, you know, he's just getting tortured for this.
Oh, sure. But here's the thing, though. When you, I mean, you mentioned Jay Gruden. I mean, Jay Gruden.
Got to mention Jay.
Can't talk about Washington without mentioning Jay. Here's the thing. Coaches have to also sort of build for the future. We talk about trying to progress players and get them to a certain level and all that. Coaches have to do the same thing. Coaches, game situations and stuff like that. So, not calling timeouts and trying to get out of the game as quickly as possible, that's not getting you in position. If you are playing Dallas for the division at the end of next season, I mean, you have to, there's live game reps for coaches too. And I don't like that he's kind of punting on that. Whereas we're talking about, getting players where they need to be, coaches need to be where they need to be too.
Yeah, there's been many an NBA game. I wish they just got it going, but they called 10 timeouts in the last 20 seconds.
Running clock.
Right. Yeah, Dave knows that.
Yes, all too well. All right, Oh, by the way, now the Ravens next for this Washington football team. Christian follows so closely. The Ravens, and coming off a loss to the Chiefs, and yeah, they woke up, but the game was over faster than many expected on Monday night. And Lamar Jackson's yet to beat the Chiefs. What's your takeaway from the Ravens' end of a 14-game regular season winning streak?
My takeaway would be, this team does need Chase Young back. We'll see what his status is ahead of this weekend, but they're going to need every single one of those front seven to be in a position where they can spy on Lamar and not allow him to get to the outside, because that's where they're going to get beat this weekend. It's Lamar taking off and getting these 30, 40-yard big runs, and then they can hand the ball off to three different guys. So is the defense ready for that? I'm just not sure, and I think without Chase Young, they're certainly going to struggle. I think and the Ravens defense too, with some great corners. Patrick Mahomes exposed the Ravens secondary, but I think we saw Monday night, he is just so far and above everybody else. The Chiefs' offense is absolutely elite. Yes, the Ravens offense was record-setting last week, but I just think Mahomes has taken it to another level with no crowd noise, no distractions. He can hear everything. He can communicate with all of his guys. So I have a hard time thinking Washington keeps this one close against the Ravens team that I think has awoken. They've been kind of coasting through a lot of not-so-great opponents outside of Tennessee in the playoffs last year and the Chiefs. But when they play bad teams, they crush them, and I think that's what's probably going to happen this weekend.
All right, Dave Preston, you've got the professor sweater on. You always bring it strong every week. Your thoughts on this matchup?
I think that it's going to be a tough one for the Burgundy and Gold because their defense has allowed more points each week, from 17 to 30 to 34. Granted, the Browns were able to get a lot of points thanks to short fields. The offense has taken a few steps back. There's no Matt Ioannidis this Sunday. Chase Young is a question mark. And each week it seems as though one member of the secondary, whether it's Troy Apke a few weeks ago, whether it's Landon Collins this past Sunday, somebody in that secondary has struggled. And I think that the Ravens are going to be able to find the weak spot in the Burgundy and Gold's defense this Sunday. It could be a very long day at FedEx Field, to say the least.
I mean, I think, and Rob, I don't think Monday night shows a Ravens' weakness as much as it shows just how good the Chiefs are. Given that, what do you expect from this matchup with Washington?
Yeah, and actually I had Baltimore in that same tier with Kansas City, and I think that Monday night game proved that that's not the case, and that Baltimore has some real soul-searching to do before they can even mention themselves in the same breath as the Chiefs, let alone anybody who's a Super Bowl contender. It seems like they lose a lot of these big games, so but just like Chris said, I mean, they don't lose to the bad teams, and Washington, as competitive as they are, I just see them giving Haskins fits again. He's probably going to have a multiple turnover day again. And I just don't see a way that Washington pulls this out. But I will mention this, and for Baltimore fans, this is pretty key. Baltimore has never won a Super Bowl without first losing to Washington in the regular season. It happened in 2000, happened in 2012. Wow. So Ravens fans, you should probably root for the Burgundy and Gold on Sunday.
Wow. That could change what Chi's going to say now with his, as far as the picks. There you go. Chi maybe change his mind.
We're about to get the Chi's pick. George,
it's not the lock of the week anymore, guys. It's not the lock of the
week. First of all, I mean, it's like you're playing Madden with Patrick Mahomes, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just so much fun to watch. And, look, it's going to be an angry Ravens team. They'll be ready to play. There's no question about that. They are at that level. They when they come off a performance like that, whether or not they're as good as the Chiefs or not, they have the mindset that if they are good enough, that if they lose a game like that, I feel bad for the next opponent. So I expect them to go into FedEx and just kind of and rebound for sure. And we'll see. This is another good test for this defense. Now without Matt Ioannidis, which is a big blow for them. Kendall Fuller is back, which is good news. And he's going to continue to get back into the flow of things. But it's like another Kyler Murray situation, although I think Lamar Jackson is better than Kyler Murray, and it's going to be tough to stop him. especially if Chase Young, like you mentioned, is not 100%. And with a growing injury, those can linger. I mean, he's not going to be 100% regardless on Sunday. So I think it could be a long afternoon for that defense. And if Haskins doesn't have the weapons again, and he look, the Ravens defense is not the Browns defense. If you're staring down receivers in Cleveland and they're fooling you, then you could have a long afternoon against Baltimore's defense as well.
Again, the Ravens
all around.
Great, yes, great point, because it's as much as we focus on Lamar Jackson or talk, they're a complete team. And again, that is probably last 20 years, and we can talk about this in a future WTOP huddle, maybe the best organization in football in the NFL.
That's true. I would add this, though. If anything else was illustrated in the Monday night game, it's that Baltimore is built to play from ahead. If you can punch them in the mouth some sort of way, you return a fumble for a score, you get a pick six, whatever. If you can get them down 14-0 early in this game, you have a chance, because again, we saw last night, they're not going to run a conventional drop back offense that allows you to get back in the game if you're Baltimore. So they're very much about running the ball, about the read option. They're all about, plays like that are great if it's 7-0 or you're playing from ahead. But if you're playing from behind, that's rough for the Ravens. So if Washington can figure out some sort of way to get up on the board on them early, that gives them at least a shot.
And the other thing, Dave, real quick, two things. One, you mentioned about the organization. They are, yes, I will say they, as far as organization, but let's also not forget they serve crab cakes at halftime, so that already puts them like up here. Two, who's gonna play Lamar Jackson in practice? You can't duplicate that in practice. So another thing for this defense this week. I mean, you can't duplicate that speed.
Yeah, that brings us back to Rob saying Washington football team should have signed Cam Newton. At least you have that option. In fact, right. I'm still trying to confirm this, but wagering apparently is going on in some of these games. So Chris, apparently Chris is winning, and you can see it because he's buying those expensive clothes. But beyond that, what's your pick this week?
We are picking on the Jacksonville Jaguars once again. I'm going with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals at home, 3-point favorites. If Ryan Fitzpatrick can absolutely carve up this Jaguars defense, I can't wait to see what Joe Burrow can do, even though he doesn't have great offensive line help. But he is the far superior quarterback to Gardner Minshew, and I like the Bengals to get the win here.
Amazing. We're out of time. And any other comments before we call time?
Yeah, Dave, I mean, look, you never know we've said. You never know what you're going to get on this huddle. We even just had fashion critique from our quarterback,
Right. No, and I would only do that because this is a Zoom call. Chris is bigger and stronger than me. He would knock me out. So
you're not in the same room, so it's all right.
Once we're back in the same room, no more talking about fashion. And you know what really stuns me is I had a bunch of questions about the Broncos-Jets game because that's such a big game coming Thursday. But that'll have to be for another day. That is all the time on the WTOP Huddle. For Chris Gian, who's got great clothes, believe me, trust me. Rob Woodford, George Wallace, and Dave Preston. I'm Dave Johnson. Thanks for watching.
Break.
Nicely done.
Perfect.